Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another EMF Health Academy event. I am so excited and thrilled and proud to have Dr. Carlos Sosa on. I wanted to introduce him myself, but there is so much to him that I had to give it. Carlos, you introduce yourself. So thank you so much, Carlos, for taking some time out of your busy day over there in Colombia and coming and joining us poor old UK people on the EMF Health Academy. Can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and where you are, and then fire away with your story?
Okay, Glenn, thank you so much for having me here, for inviting me. I'm very honored, and I've always been open to helping people, and especially medical doctors, because there is a gigantic ignorance all over the planet. The medical effects of microwave and radio frequency radiation, and in general terms of all electromagnetic fields, they're not taught in medical school. And not only are they not taught in medical school, but they are also denied throughout the planet because of the fact that there are powerful vested interests related to the power, the industrial power of the ruling superpowers that run the world. And therefore, because all modern technology has to do either with radio frequency radiation or microwave radiation, it's like fighting a drug cartel. It's a fight of a tiger against a tied up donkey. So there's not much hope in terms of the power of us victims or us medical doctors against the establishment and all these industries that revolve around electromagnetic fields. So let me introduce myself. I'm a medical doctor. I live in Medellin, Colombia, in South America, and I have a classical training. Our medical schools at the beginning of the 20th century were totally French. And of course, after the First World War, our education turned into American, of course. Mm-hmm. So I have a classical upbringing, so to speak, in medicine. So I study all the classical things. I'm not an alternative doctor. I went to school and I studied surgery, and I studied internal medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, psychiatry, public health, so on and so forth. I'm not an osteopathic medicine. I'm not an homeopathic medicine. I worked as a general practitioner for some years, and then I ended up working in the ER. My career basically came to an end in 2006 because of the fact that I used to work in the ER, and the night shifts were real harsh. We had to do 24, 48, 72 hours straight. That at this point in time, that has been forbidden completely in Colombia because it was terrible. So most of the time I was very, very busy. I had a lot of things to do. And it was a big misfortune that in the building where I live, my father, who's the owner, he gave the authorization for a company, a Wi-Fi company, to set up an antenna on the roof. And they did. And since I wasn't home, I did not notice anything during the first years. But suddenly, back in 2006, I was preparing for my residency in the United States. I wanted to go and study neurology in the United States. So I had been preparing for the test like for 2 years for the United States medical licensing examination. And it's hard. It's one of the hardest tests in terms of medicine on the planet. It's probably the hardest because you have to basically, they ask you the toughest questions in every subject from the very first day of medical school in anatomy to the last days in obstetrics and gynecology. So I wanted to do it, and I wanted that challenge because I like that type of challenge. So I had requested a special permission from the hospital if I could take a month or two off. May of 2006 we're talking. So I started studying under the antenna around May the 1st, May the 2nd. And by May the 4th or the 5th, I woke up totally dizzy, and I had a totally metallic taste in my mouth. And it was as though I had like a rusted bolt inside my mouth, and I'd slept with it. And I couldn't understand. And I was so totally off the planet. I knew it was my house. It was my room. It was my own personal library. but I felt strange, and something was going on, and I was dizzy, and I had studied for 2 years the basic science part of the United States medical licensing examination, and went back to studying, and I would review my text, and I usually write on my text and put every type of sign and comment or X's, and then just put on everything I think about the test. And because I had like a very hard train of study during the past 2 years, I could see all my writing, but I could not recognize when the hell did I study all this? When did I study biochemistry? When did I study microbiology? I couldn't remember, and I've been studying very dedicating a lot of time to my study when I had the time, of course. Um, and I just couldn't understand what the hell is going on. So I tried to continue studying, and what started happening, starting back in May of 2006, is that I would read a chapter, and of course I would my routine is to close the book and to review in my mind. For example, the type of diuretic drugs I have. What are the main types of diuretics? What are the main mechanisms? And every time I closed the book, I couldn't even remember the title. I said, what the hell is going on? I mean, what happened? And I kept having this metallic taste in my mouth. So additionally, I started noticing that every time I approached the building, I had a burning sensation inside of me, as though they had poured like a gallon of gasoline on my body, especially on my head. It, the sensation was that they had lit a fire on the gasoline.
Wow.
And I went very dizzy, and then I started having tachycardia, and I wanted to vomit, and I couldn't remember things, and I started having a lot of aggression against my parents. I'm responsible for both my handicapped parents, and the whole world started seeing me. Everything seems strange to me. I mean, I know it was my city. I know this is where I live. These are my parents, but something is going on. And then I was not aware of it. But we have a big metro that goes from north to south in the city. And every time I would ride the metro, when it parked right in front of one of these cell phone antennas, I got all the symptoms returned. The burning sensation on my head, the nausea, the tachycardia, the dizziness, the sensation that I'm going to vomit,
Mm.
and of course the forgetfulness. That was very serious in the first years, and of course this tachycardia, and I was feeling terrible, 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 and it happened. It started to happen repeatedly all across town. And at first I thought this is, oh my God, cuckoo. One flew east, one flew west, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. And this is totally psychiatric. This is totally psychiatric.
Yeah.
And I did have the purpose. I did have the purpose to commit suicide
Wow.
because the symptoms were totally intolerable.
Wow.
This burning sensation was terrible, terrible. It was killing me.
Mm.
And I also started noting that there were certain parts of town where I would go and I would get the sensation.
Mm.
My God, but if there is no antenna here, why am I getting this? But I haven't made the association right at this point in time. So I learned that if I would go around the block, or maybe a block further on, north, south, or west, I would find the antenna, because sometimes they're hidden, or sometimes they're like in fake trees or behind a wall. I said, oh my God, this is the damn antenna that is killing me. So I couldn't study. I couldn't take the test. I paid for the test, which was very expensive back in those days. It was like $800, and I couldn't take it. I couldn't finish studying. And I had to request the intervention of our state medical authority of the state in Colombia. Medellin is the capital of the state of Antioquia. That's the name of the state. So there's a medical authority. The state authority is very strong. It basically runs the whole medical field in our city. So I asked their intervention, and also I requested the city, the municipality of Medellin, to come forward, and I requested our National Ministry of Communications to come over because I had an antenna, and I requested their help, and it took them a year to finally make a decision. I finally got a statement from them. They did come. The engineers came with these spectrum analyzers, very sophisticated equipment, and they told me this is within the national standard. It is legal. Nothing here is illegal. It's totally normal. We don't understand what's going on with you. And of course, I had started learning about microwave radiation and radio frequency radiation. So I had a few documents, not very many. I think it was maybe 12 or 15 documents. They were back in those days. It was not easy to get the documents on the internet. So I finally realized I learned about the microwave syndrome and the radio frequency disease, and I started looking all over the world. Of course, in the United States first. And I found the Environmental Health Center in Dallas, headed by the late William Ray. And I called him up and told him, Dr. Ray, I'm dying, I'm burning, I'm having tachycardias. I think I'm also having heart arrhythmias. I feel dizzy. The doctor is terrible. I can't sleep. There was also insomnia. The first year was terrible because I couldn't sleep. I kind of maybe slept 2 or 3 minutes every once in a while during the day, but at night I was my eyes were wide open like an owl, and it was terrible. I said, well, Carlos, you need to come to Dallas so I can examine you. But yeah, sure, you have the condition. So I did, and I went to Dr. Ray, and my God, at first, I was very, very cocky back in those days because I had recently graduated. I graduated in 1995, of course, but I was pretty new to the profession, so I thought that I was such a genius, and I knew so much medicine. And first day I go into his office, he opens my mouth and let me see what you. I look so. Mercury has to go.
Yeah.
You cannot have mercury in your mouth. First thing he says.
Mm.
And just by chance, I had heard that all along my life because my mom's obstetrician, her gynecologist, was one of the pioneers of alternative medicine in Colombia, especially of homeopathic medicine and neural therapy. So he used to travel back in the 1960s and 1970s to Germany like 3 times or 4 times a year. And he kept on telling her, listen, tell your kids to remove all the mercury from your mouth, because I think back in those days, it was already forbidden. Mercury in your mouth was already forbidden in Germany. And it was very fun because he established a center with a very well-known internal medicine specialist in a town in the western part of the city called Popayán, and they created an international center for the education of medical doctors and homeopathic medicine, neural therapy, Chinese acupuncture. And he was a professor. Dr. Guzman was a professor at the university I went to. So I had heard that and said, there's something strange. Why does an obstetrician, an obstetric specialist, and a gynecologist, and Dr. Rea, who's a general surgeon, he is a cardiovascular surgeon, and of course the first dean of the first department of environmental medicine in the UK. Why is there this coincidence? It's nowhere to be seen, or you cannot study this in any medicine book. So I was there. I went for one day because it was just one appointment I had, but I was staying at a friend's house in San Antonio, in Texas. He's a close friend of mine who's now a professor at Harvard University. He's a psychiatry professor. And so I got an appointment for 2 weeks to be there. So I had to return. And there was a flight from San Antonio to Dallas. It was a night flight around 7. And we're talking about 2006. And, the episode with the World Trade Center had been relatively very recent. So I get on the plane, and they close the doors, and the tiny white light on top of the window, they turn it on, and as soon as they turn it on, all the symptoms came back: the dizziness, the burning, the tachycardia, the nausea, this sense that I'm going mad. It returned, and I did not realize what it was. I had not made the connection between the electromagnetic fields of the white lights, of the neon lights,
Mm.
uh, with my condition. And I had a panic attack
Right.
before the airplane lifted up. And it's one thing to read the things on a medicine book, and it's totally different to suffer the symptoms. And I
Yeah.
had never had a panic attack. So of course, my heart started racing like hell. I couldn't breathe. I had this imminent sensation that I was going to die, and I
Mm.
was desperate. And the airplane started rolling, and I was about to get up and start screaming that I needed to get out the fucking plane. That's what I felt. I need to get off the plane. I'm going to die there. But since the episode with the World Trade Center was so recent, I knew I couldn't do that because there was a totally new legislation. And if I had done that, I'd probably be in jail at this point in time. So
No shot.
I tried to breathe deeply and relax and meditate. And eventually, after 20 minutes, this imminence of the panic attack that I was going to die, it just faded away, and I was able to continue my flight all the way to Dallas. Dr. Ray, he made 4 diagnoses. Let me see if I can remember the 4 of them. I had a toxic encephalopathy. It affected my brain. It had toxic action on not only my brain, but the cardiovascular system. I had a severe dysautonomia, an immune dysregulation, and of course the electromagnetic sensitivity, the dysautonomia, the toxic encephalopathy. Is that 4 diagnoses already?
Yeah, Dr. Kelly, could you just explain that for our students so that
Okay,
in a little bit more layman's terms? Because
sure, sure.
I've gone like that, and
Okay, perfect.
some of them will know, but others might not.
Absolutely. One of the big problems with electromagnetic fields, especially all these wireless technologies, but it's not limited to that, because the electromagnetic fields from power lines, from high tension cables,
Hmm.
also causes identical or similar effects. So the central nervous system is exquisitely sensitive to radio frequency radiation and to microwave radiation. And basically, all the military industry and all modern industries, all the communication industries depend on microwave and radio frequency radiation. We couldn't have sent the man to the moon without our communication, which goes at the speed of light, 300,000 kilometers per second, because otherwise we wouldn't have airplane navigation, or we couldn't have gone to space, or satellites, or all these spy satellites. Everything runs on that.
Mm.
Unfortunately, the autonomic part of the nervous system, autonomic meaning automatic, the autonomic nervous system takes care of every single automatic function. For example, the breathing, the heart rhythm, the blood pressure, sweating, part of the sexual response, gastrointestinal transit. There's a whole bunch of things that you don't need to think about. And my God, if we had to think about our heart beating or our lungs getting inflated, that would be terrible.
Mm.
The autonomic nervous system is exquisitely sensitive to this. So I had permanent damage, both in the central, meaning in the brain, the central part of the autonomic nervous system, because it's regulated inside the brain, and the heart part. Actually, that diagnosis back in those days, and when I went to see Dr. Ray in 2006 in Dallas, he had a very sophisticated machine, which I think came from Latvia. It was a technician for a doctor from Latvia who invented the machine. He used the reaction of the pupils to make the diagnosis. Very sophisticated things. Most diagnoses of dysautonomia, meaning the damage to the autonomic nervous system, are made by cardiologists in medicine, and the instrument or the gadget is called a tilt test. It's a tilt test that they place you over. They tie you up and they start moving you up and down, head up, feet down. And the normal response in a normal person who has no dysautonomia, no damage to the autonomic nervous system, is that the heart will increase the power, the inotropic power. Inotropism is the term in medicine. Uh, and the speed at which it's beating, the heartbeat is going to increase, and the blood pressure is also going to increase, so that the blood that's when they're moving you up and down, it has a tendency to stay in your feet. So the normal response is that. Now, if you have a dysautonomia like I do, the normal response is that there's a term called pre-syncopal symptoms. You start like fading away, and you close your eyes, and you start losing it, and it's more or less like having a panic attack. You feel that you're dying because, of course, the blood is not returning to your head, and many people suffer the syncope. They lose consciousness. And of course, this is done by a specialist. This is in a cardiological unit where it can be done, and it's very specialized. So not every doctor can do it. It's limited to specialized cardiologists. So he made the diagnosis. Now, about the diagnosis of electromagnetic hypersensitivity, it is absolutely a clinical. At this point in time, it's a clinical diagnosis, meaning that it depends on the signs and symptoms. And by signs, I mean what the doctor objectively finds. For example, this patient is hot, he has a fever, and you places the thermometer in place. Of course, 38 degrees Celsius. Yeah, you have a fever, or he has a tachycardia. What the doctor finds, and it's an objective sign, is what we call the signs. That's something to object. And the symptoms, of course, is what the patient relates. What happens? What are the signs and symptoms of electromagnetic hypersensitivity? You need to bear in mind that because of the fact that every single cell in the human body creates and produces electrical action potentials, every single tissue and every single organ in the human body can be affected by these electromagnetic fields that are being used in Wi-Fi, the technologies, cell phones, cell phone antennas, satellites, so on and so forth. It's a soup around the planet that is killing us. So I'll give you some of the symptoms, but I've seen many presentations. I have seen patients that the initial clinical picture is of a patient who has diabetes. Why would one expect a patient that has diabetes to have something related to electromagnetic fields? It's very simple. Because the electromagnetic fields destroy and affect every single part of the autonomic nervous system, and in this specific case of the pancreas and the beta cells in the pancreas that produce insulin. I have a patient with a very similar case that he has an antenna. He's been diabetic for years, ever since they set up the antenna right in front of his building, and he doesn't know why. And I was there once, and I couldn't bear the radiation. I said, "Oh my God!" And actually, I would like to make the case. Dr. Ray has a good, I call it an encyclopedia, because it's a 5-volume collection called Reversibility of Chronic Disease and Hypersensitivity, which is a classic. And unfortunately, I haven't met the first doctor on the planet who has read it. I myself still feel missing volume number 5, because it's the big one about chemical sensitivity. And he has a case. He tells about a patient he had. He was terribly bad. He was not responding to the treatment by the internal medicine specialist. And they started looking. Of course, he had an antenna right in front of his house. So this is very sophisticated. And okay, let me go back to the symptoms. You can find the patient who has dizziness, headaches, tinnitus, which is the ringing in the ears, tachycardia, or many times it's just an uneasiness that you feel that something is happening, but you can identify what it is. Many patients lose consciousness. They faint. They have syncope. They fall on the ground. There are dysesthesias, meaning that these are serious alterations or the sensations. Many people start hearing the sound. They get very pissed off with the radio or the barking of a dog, or the airplane passing. Many patients, many of them have serious cardiovascular issues, especially heart arrhythmias. Um, and it's you need to be aware that the diagnosis of electromagnetic sensitivity or hypersensitivity, which I like to call it. Dr. Ray didn't like the name hypersensitivity. He used to call it electromagnetic sensitivity because, of course, we are all sensitive to electromagnetic fields.
Yeah.
Like we all respond to electromagnetic fields. So, now what was I going to say? Okay, so the diagnosis with electromagnetic hypersensitivity is a clinical syndrome. And by syndrome, I mean it's a collection, it's a group of signs of objective findings and symptoms of subjective things that the patient tells you. So it's not, there's no single exam, though one of the most important, because 95% of patients with electromagnetic hypersensitivity also have a severe dysautonomia, like I do. Okay, that's just for the part of the dysautonomia. The toxic encephalopathy is the toxic action of these electromagnetic fields that kill or damage the neurons, especially in the frontal areas, and that perfectly explains why on earth was it that I forgot what I studied for my test in the United States? Why, how come I forgot everything I had studied for the United States licensing examination? I just couldn't remember when on earth I had read thousands of pages, and then yeah, that's my writing, those are my notes, and it's me, but I can't remember what I studied. So it was very severe at that point. Okay, let me make this short because the story goes on and on. So Dr. Surya, I was there for like 2 weeks. He made part of the diagnosis. You need to be aware that there is a very heavy immunological component. Many patients who have electromagnetic hypersensitivity or who have been exposed to these antennas, to the Wi-Fi routers, or many times it's just power lines or some source of electromagnetic fields chronically, they have some type of immune dysfunction, either the cellular immunity or the antibodies, which they call humoral immunity. And many of these patients, like the Italian girl I told you about, they start reacting against themselves because there's a concept, and actually there's a British doctor who called it horror autotoxicus, meaning that the body does not attack itself. But that is lost when you have this type of an illness, electromagnetic sensitivity or radio frequency disease. You know, this runs by several names. You want to call it microwave disease, it's okay. It has several terms, but it boils down to the same thing. The immune dysfunction basically makes you allergic to everything. There was a time, because I had another crisis 5 years ago, and I had to go see Dr. Ray when he passed away 5 years ago. And I had become allergic basically to half of the periodic table. Dr. Ray had a very sophisticated lab. He could process more than 100,000 antigens against basically everything. Let me tell you the story. There was a guy in California some years ago, a Spanish guy who used to live there. And he contacted me on my email and said, Dr. Sosa, I'm dying. I cannot tolerate my Wi-Fi, my cell phone. I get sick every time I get to work because it's full of neon lights. There's a router. I feel dizzy. I want to vomit. I cannot live like that. Please help me. I said, well, listen, dude, you live in California. Why don't you go visit Go visit God who lives in Dallas at the Environmental Health Center. And because I think you have an allergic component because you live in California. So he did. And a few months later, he wrote back and said, oh my God, Dr. Sosa, thank you so much. Dr. Rea found that I'm allergic to uranium. And I said, what? Come on. And well, I inquired, and yes, of course, there had been a few atomic bomb tests, and the water for the aqueduct in Los Angeles come from the northern part in the Sierras up in the northern part of the state. And it brings down a lot of radiation, and depending on how much damage and how much accumulated toxicity, And you got to keep that concept in mind, because there's a whole bunch of toxicities related to the start of the syndrome itself. Many patients have, for example, mold toxicity or fungi toxicity or chemical toxicity, petrochemicals. Many patients have been exposed to, especially in the Carolinas, there's a toxic tree somewhere, I forget the name right now, but around August, September, it releases this substance which is toxic for human beings. So he also had this type of thing. And let me tell you, when Dr. Ray opened the clinic in Dallas in 1974, what I learned from him is that most of his patients were coming from NASA and from the U.S. Air Force, because, of course, all these pilots, they fly on top, either sitting down on the radar or on the wings. There's a radar on the wings or on the back part of the plane, and they are exposed at all times, and they are aware of this condition. The German pilots during the Second World War, they were suffering. It's very funny because I used to joke with Dr. Rea because I don't know if you know this, but he was there in Dallas when they killed President Kennedy, and of course he saw the woods, and he knew who killed it. Was it this criminal? I forget his name, Oswald, who killed him or not? And of course, the brain came out this way, sideways, and of course, it was a high-speed bullet that had no relationship with the bullet that Oswald had.
Dr. Sosa, can I just interrupt you?
Go ahead. Sure.
I've got a question, and if I don't ask it, I'm likely to forget it. And it's a sort of, it's built up over the last 10 minutes or so as I've listened to you. Can you help me with this? So at the moment in the UK, of course, many people have taken the state injectable, the vaccinations, the mRNA vaccinations. We're seeing a dramatic increase in chemtrails.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at the moment, going through Parliament is a law that will allow the telco operators to put 5G millimeter wave antennas anywhere they want.
Yeah.
Could you sort of take all that in and in as brief a way as you can explain to our viewers what that is likely to do to them? Those combinations. Most of our viewers will not have taken the injection, but they probably have relatives who have.
Yeah, this is the part of environmental toxicity that is killing us. It's not only the air, the water, everything, every food that we take has some type of chemical or pesticide. And you mentioned something which is very important: the vaccine, especially against the COVID-19. I was just reviewing this morning one a glorious a document which they published, I think it was a year ago, on the effects of the COVID vaccine, which of course was a medical fraud. It was the COVID vaccine is a criminal fraud against mankind. Is a genocide against mankind. It's killed more people than it has saved. And just this morning there was this document on the impact of electromagnetic fields and the COVID-19, and it was an added toxicity to what was already going on. I think that can we
get that document, Carlos? Can we get a copy of it?
Yes. Let me look for it, and I'll send
it later on. If you email it me later on, we'll add it into the...
Oh yeah. By the way, let me make the parentheses because I want to share this with all the world, and that's why I'm here. I have a very powerful library of documents, medical documents, PDF documents, that is around 3,500 documents that I'm willing to share for free, because the medicine should be free, and human knowledge is there to share it with especially with the medical profession. But anyone who wants to learn, I'll send whatever you want. I can send you the whole collection so that you have it, you make it public. This this has required a lot of dedication because I've read it all. It's taken me 17 years to come here, and I want to share all this knowledge. I'll send you the flash memory so that your audience can have free access to this. Because at this point in time, it's a world urgency. Now, going back to your question, this authorization of basically zapping not just the UK but all of mankind, it's a genocide. It's a genocide. The mechanisms of electromagnetic fields are known. There is a very heavy and very powerful tradition of research and investigation and knowledge about the effects of these these electromagnetic fields in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union. Let me tell you, I don't know, you're probably familiar with the glacial list. I was able to publish the glacial list back in 2008 at Paul Doyen's, it's called EMF Refugees at yahoo.com.
Yeah.
I made it public back in those days, and I got it from a British activist called the late Catherine Gamba, unfortunately, who had the document. And, I had knocked on doors all over the planet, here in this university, this research institute, and nobody had it. And of course, it's such a glorious document because it demonstrated that the federal government of the United States knew that this was toxic, knew that it had the possibility to be lethal, to kill people. And despite that, the federal government did not do anything to protect the U.S. population, and especially children who are very susceptible to the damage of the autonomic nervous system. And of course, we have a gigantic epidemic of cancer going on around the world. And it's not, at this point in time, we cannot say, and they cannot say, that we don't know the mechanisms, because there are every day more and more mechanisms. There's, of course, free radical toxicity, membrane toxicity, mitochondrial toxicity. Every single tissue of the human body is affected, and I have the studies. The brain gets affected. There are glorious texts in the field of neurology, in the field of cardiology and hematology, not to mention oncology, not to mention the genetics, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. It has had a geometric progression, but not now. Since the 1920s, 1930s, when the Soviet Union originally started discussing and discovering all these things related to the technologies, the military technologies they were using to conquer space, the space race, and all these military vessels and everything related to the military industry. I think it's a tragedy for the people of the UK. It's criminal. There is evidence that obeys it. The truth we have found about electromagnetic fields is toxic according to the Bradford Hill criteria and the Koch-Henle postulates, which, so to say, are the scaffolds that we use in epidemiology to determine as to whether or not any substance or any toxic or a mold, a bacteria, a virus is responsible for X disease. That's basically what Robert Koch used in order to determine that the Koch bacilli were responsible for the clinical presentation of tuberculosis. So there is the evidence. It's very scientific. It has used the scientific process, the scientific method. So at this point in time, it's totally impossible to say that nothing's going to happen. There is, of course, a lot of ignorance. And aside from the ignorance, there are powerful vested interests in the United Kingdom, because, of course, saying the UK is like saying the United States. Yeah. You have companies, you have the same people, you have your cousins across the Atlantic that have this will to get money, and the COVID-19 fraud is just another example. This is the same false story. This is going to kill you. This is very bad, or this is very good. Nothing's going to happen. It's the same story around money, and this is criminal. It's premeditated, and especially inside the WHO, there's a big criminal problem going on with the what do you call it, the EMF project, initially headed by this guy, the infamous Michael Rapaccioli.
Oh yeah,
who is I think he still is I was an Australian physicist who was head, and then there was this lady, the fundamental Emily Perkins fundamental, and
I think Carlos Eileen talked on last month's event quite some about Dr. Rapichelli, because she'd had a lot of interest in dealings with him. Could you tell us, Carlos, about in two ways? Obviously we were speaking earlier before we started the interview, and you're actually at 95%, you said, of your health capacity. So we've got in our audience, we've got some people who are electrosensitive and adjust that, but we've also got some practitioners, and we're involved with some organizations that would love to see this video. So once we've edited it and you've approved it, if you're okay, then we'll send it out. But to finish the interview, because we've only got 20 minutes now, could you tell us how you got well, and then how you would advise the practitioners and the people who are electrosensitive to get well?
Yeah, wonderful, because there's people don't know how many blood tears I've shed, and it's literally it's been hell on earth. One of the very important things, and I discovered this just by chance, was exercise. Of course, the tolerance to exercise must be guided by the physician. You cannot just go and start running like hell. No, you can't do that, because of course many patients have very severe cardiovascular impacts, like I did, because I was having 2, 3, 5, 6 syncopes a day, and then it started going to a week, and then to every 2 weeks, and then a month, and it started getting better. I was in the jungle in our mountains, in a place where my father comes from. And so it was in the jungle, and I had to leave the city when I returned from the United States from Dr. Ray, and that's what he recommended. Go to feel yourself very happy, because you have jungles. You still have jungles. And my patients come from New York, from Los Angeles, from Toronto, and they always have to go back to the same place, which is hell, and it's hard. You got to go to the Appalachians here, and it's very expensive, and it's not easy to go. So I did, and I had to return to the city to sign some papers, and I was real deep in the forest, like an hour away. So I woke up at 5, and I was supposed to wake up like at 4:30 to catch the bus. So I ran like hell and hurt myself, fell down, but I finally made it to the bus. And one of the things I noted was that I was sweating, and all my clothes were wet. But the moment I got on the bus, everything went back to normal, and I was not dizzy. I wasn't feeling bad. I was not feeling the electromagnetic fields. I said, my God. Eventually, when I had the tilt test done, I learned that my dysautonomia, of course, every single dysautonomia has 2 possibilities. It can be a sympathetic, referring to the sympathetic nervous system, or parasympathetic. Mine was parasympathetic, which is the one that tends to reduce everything. It reduces the heart rhythm. It reduces the breathing rhythm, the hormonal secretion. Everything goes down. So the exercise increases the release of adrenaline, and it brought me back to normal. So that was just by chance. But Dr. Ray, I knew. And how did I know he knew? Because he had one of these static bicycles that you get the patients on, starting cycling. And he asked me if I wanted to do this. I said, what on earth? Of course, because I had my doubts, because, of course, I'm such a genius, and I know so much man. I don't even know 0.00 what Dr. Ray knew. And so that was one of the basic things. Now, there's something called the oxidation reduction potential in medicine that you have to consider. I would say that 100% of patients who have electromagnetic hypersensitivity have a serious alteration of the balance, because you need free radicals, because they're signaling units that are used by every single system in the human body. But of course, if you have too much of them, it becomes toxic. So one of the basic things, and I want to make this public too, so that people can know about this. If you are electrosensitive, if your renal function, your kidney function is okay, of course, you've got to double check everything with your treating physician. But if you can treat, and you're more or less you're not lying on your bed 24 hours a day, start taking vitamin C. Now, I recommend a brand, because it's the best brand. I've had a lot of experience with many brands from all around the world. And there's a brand called Solgar, which is the company that's been in business since 1947 or 48. It's excellent. And they don't use all these preservatives, which can harm you, because most of us patients with electromagnetic hypersensitivity, we end up developing a chemical sensitivity, which I also have, and that's why I became allergic to the periodic table and to most foods I was taking. So start taking 6 grams of vitamin C during the day, every 2 hours, every 3 hours, slowly with water. You don't need to raise, you don't need to take them at all, every single day. That will improve your oxidative stress, oxidation and reduction, the proportion. So if you want to do it, also start taking selenium. It's like 0.5 of selenium I was taking. CoQ enzyme 10, CoQ10 is very useful. Vitamin E is fundamental. Vitamin A is also fundamental. But again, you got to make sure that your kidneys and your livers are functioning properly. So don't start this on your own. Head to your treating physician. And of course, I know it's very hard in the UK. Nobody's going to believe you. I've been sent I've been sent to the psychiatrist like 3 times. Fortunately enough, I was a resident of psychiatry at our national university in Bogota, so I know what they were looking for, and I know what the physical exam, the mental examination is about. So now, of course, the first one psychiatrist they sent me to is Carlos. You have a perfectly normal examination, and of course, he knew about electromagnetic hypersensitivity. This is real. It is affecting the central nervous system, but you don't have psychopathology to be in a psychiatric ward. So I said, okay, cool. And then they sent me again, like 1 or 2 times again. What else? The exercise, you have to check on your heavy metals, because that is absolutely important. When Dr. Ray double checked my levels, they were out of scale. He said to be continued, like the TV series, and then to be continued next week, it was out of scale. And that's what would happen. So the thing is that the mercury amalgams I had in my teeth, they melted with the antenna right here on top of the building. And I have that has been documented. I have the documents that are evidence that happens, because of course the doctors are not going to believe you. I have the medical evidence published in index journals that I can send to anybody who wants, and I'll give you my you can paste it on your website, Glenn. But also there's a broad spectrum of things. There's a gamut of tests that need to be done. You got to make sure that you don't have any autoimmune disease. Make sure you don't have AIDS. Make sure you don't have molds, fungi, or any chronic infection. And of course, you got to review have you been in contact with any pesticide, especially in the United States, because it's so frequent that the gardener comes and they spray every type of chemical to kill the weeds, like Roundup. It's very common. So that's that part. Now, one of the things I would recommend is if you can afford it, shield yourself. You're probably going to be able to see my Faraday cage, which I got around 2008, I think. It allowed me to lead a more or less normal life, but of course it's terrible because I stayed there, tried to stay 24 hours a day, but after sleeping there 12 hours, it's terrible. I mean, a cage, even if it's a golden cage, it's a cage. It's terrible, and it felt prisoner, and I couldn't tolerate it, and I was losing my mental homeostasis, so to say.
Can I interrupt you, Dr. Susan, that we, as you know, I've been around doing this for quite some time, since 2004. And so I actually designed the first canopy in the UK, bed canopy. And we've had great success with people who sleep in the canopy or the Faraday cage, if you like. It seems to give them the power to get through the days. Can you sort of scientificize that for me, if you like?
Yes, there's a German concept of what they have called the modern modern German medicine, which started with Hammer back in the 1960s, 1970s. Mm-hmm. And one of the concepts is the body homeostasis. There are some limits that allow you to move the normal physiology to move within. And if the normal physiology, if you trespass the barrier, you'll lose one system after another, and it's very frequent. I've seen it. I had it myself because I started losing my cardiovascular system, then the neurological system, then the immune system, and it's a whole chain of events. And eventually, you're not only electromagnetically sensitive, or you're also chemically sensitive. Mm-hmm. So what happens with the Faraday cage is that it allows the body, at least for whatever you sleep, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, to recover the homeostasis and not be in contact with this toxic environment full of frequencies, satellite frequencies, military frequencies, the Wi-Fi, the cell phones. Well, pagers don't exist anymore, but when I got sick, they did. And every type of garbage in the environment that is killing us, it is toxic to every single human cell. So if you can afford the Faraday cage, it's awesome. I stayed in there 5 years. Mm-hmm. And it allowed me to go back to work because I couldn't go back to the ER. The first day when I returned from Dallas, I was on the computer, and immediately I started having something called lateral pulsion, which is the subjective sensation that you're going sideways. And actually, I have a supermarket like 5 blocks away from here. And when I got sick, I went there almost every single day. And I noticed that I had to hold something on get a hold on the shelf because I started having the lateral pulsion. I couldn't remember, what the hell is this? And it was very funny because the first day I went to see Dr. Ray, I went to a seafood restaurant and I went to the bathroom and I opened the door. And as soon as the door in the bathroom opened, of course, there were the neon lights right there on the roof. Mm-hmm. And first thing I feel, my God, the lateral pulsion was there. And I said, Jesus Christ, this Dr. Red is a genius. He had asked me that. Carlos, what do you feel when you're close to neon lights? I said, no, Dr. Red, I haven't noticed anything at this point in time. Mm-hmm. And just a few minutes afterwards, when I went to eat lunch, there was my answer. It's the electromagnetic field, certain specific frequencies, because everybody has a different frequency. I've seen patients that are only allergic or react to power lines or to neon lights or to yellow lights or just cell phones and not Wi-Fi, or Wi-Fi and not power lines. And some patients also, because I had that happen, I started just sensitive to Wi-Fi, and then it got worse and it started being computers, refrigerators, photocopying machines, power lines. It went on, and then eventually I became chemically sensitive.
Can I interrupt again, Doctor?
Yeah.
So am I right then in saying that, thank you so much, you've given us, me, as I say, I've been around this business of almost 20 years, but I've learned so much in the last 53 minutes or whatever it is, more than I've probably learned in the last 20 years. Or maybe not, but a considerable amount. So if people, of course, the majority of people, we believe, I think you and I agreed earlier on, didn't we, that everybody is electrosensitive. It's just, as you've just described, really, it's different to different things and to different levels. But I think one of the things that I've picked up from this last 50 odd minutes is, if we don't start to do some of the things you've suggested, it's great. And I've understood, I have really learned an amazing amount. I'm so thrilled that you've been on. And it's going to help me help more people. And I think that the audience that's watching is going to help. It's going to help them help more people. So you've done a great job today, Carlos. But am I right in saying, if people don't start to take reasonable, let's say reasonable, I mean, I know 6 grams is quite a lot. I used to take about 4 grams, and that I thought that was a lot, but of vitamin C. And if they don't start to take selenium, and if they don't take CoQ10, and if they don't get vitamin E and vitamin A, if they don't do exercise, and if they don't perhaps make sure, whatever way, a Faraday cage or a canopy, of course, is a great way, or painting a room and putting window film, etc. in, or netting more these days. If they don't do that, they're likely to end up in this modern world with 5G and everything, they're likely to end up hypersensitive to EMF and also chemical sensitive. Would you say that was the first statement?
Well, it's going to end up in a genocide, which is actually going on. I've read some few statistics that are talking that about 3 to 5% of the world population has some type of symptom related to electromagnetic fields or electromagnetic hypersensitivity.
Yeah.
It's wonderful that you asked, because let me tell you the story. I have a friend who lives close by, maybe 4 blocks away, and they had it's still there, an antenna, cell phone antenna, half a block away. It's a family of 10 girls. Well, they're old ladies now; they're not girls anymore. And I'm a friend of the youngest one, and so I went up to her and told her back in 2008, 2009, listen, Nubia, you need to take care of this. You believe me, I've had this happen over and over again around the city. They're friends, acquaintances, patients. Listen, you need to remove the antenna you have on top of your house, or right in front of your house or your building, or 1 mile away or 2 miles away, because it's totally impossible. I know. But I asked her for help if they would sign the documents. They said, yes, I'll sign the Carlos. Oh, yeah, sure, Carlos. Well, let's go to court. So the day I went back to her, Nuria, here's the document, please sign. I said, oh, Carlos, I can't sign it because my sister's an attorney, and she works with the Attorney General, and she told me not to sign it because they're dangerous and they're the owners of the planet and they will kill me if I sign it. And I said, sure. It's legitimate. Many patients have been killed. Dr. Ray had patients who were killed. So that's nothing new. It happens all the time. It's like fighting against the mafia against cocaine or morphine traffic. Yeah, you can. You're fighting a lost war.
You'd know that living where you live, wouldn't you?
Yes. So I said, Nubia, don't worry. Send your sister a big hug, a kiss, and no problem. But let me tell you something. I just hope that one of these days, maybe tomorrow, next month, next year, one of your sisters is not affected by cancer. And I hope that it doesn't happen. And say, oh, yeah, sure. People think I'm joking about this. Sure enough, like a month and a half away in the future, she calls me and says, Carlos, I need your help. So I went over and says, Carlos, the blonde, they used to call her the blonde, her sister, I forget her name. She has a colon carcinoma. I said, oh my God. And it was so advanced that they couldn't do much. They couldn't even start the chemotherapy or the radiotherapy because it was big. It was a big volleyball this size. And she passed away. And nothing could be done. And all of them, they would look at me and they would cry, and they realized I was telling them the truth. So it's a genocide. What's going on in the UK and around the world, if this legislation concerning 5G is passed, it's going to be it's going to be worse than Gaza. We're talking about not thousands of people, but a good percentage of the human population. And I don't know if you're aware that the levels of sterile patients who can have children has skyrocketed during the last 20 years. And of course, they're talking about the fact that coronary disease, the heart attacks, heart infarcts, they are estimated that that's the first cause of death on the planet. But cancer is growing up dangerously close to coronary disease, and they are expecting that it might go beyond the international incidence of coronary disease to become the first cause of cancer. And the documents published in the international medical literature, the index international literature, are concerned that the cases of cancer around these cell phone antennas and all these cell phone towers, or the masts, as you call them in the UK, it has skyrocketed. There's a classical document in Brazil, and there's another one in the Bayern in Germany, the southern part of Germany, about the cases. And of course, there's this famous case of the school in Spain some years ago where and two teachers.
Yeah.
Garcia Quintana schools. There's the case.
Okay. Dr. Carlos, it's been absolutely fantastic. I'm working with a number of different organizations now that I think it would be great if we could do some more of this. Maybe I don't know if we can talk maybe by email or maybe meet again, just you and I. I'd love to sort of set up some clinics where we could bring some of our patients, our clients, to sit maybe just directly before you, and I don't know. I just feel that I feel that this is the beginning of something rather than. I've so loved listening to you and spending this hour with you. I'd like to do some more. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I think I don't think for me, I don't want it to be the last time I sit with you. And I think the other people that are watching this video will probably feel the same. So thank you so much for giving your time.
Oh, Glenn, listen. I went to Greenbank, to the haven of electromagnetic patients in West Virginia 5 years ago, because I was dying. I was having syncopes again. And what was I going to tell you, for God's sake? Oh, yeah. I would be even more ambitious. I was over the time I was there, I was thinking of, well, why don't we do the first international congress of electromagnetic hypersensitivity patients for all the planet? Well, we could start with the United States, but and we got the observatory there. The people who run, I think it's Michael Steen or something like that, the director. They are willing to do the Congress, and they have a wonderful space, an auditorium, that we could do the first international Congress concerning this. But of course, I am open to help people. I don't charge a cent to anybody. I cannot charge a cent because I got a minimum wage pension because of the neurological and cardiovascular damages I suffered. I cannot work anymore, and I cannot work anymore because if nowadays every single patient comes into the cell phone and you ask it, ma'am, would you turn it off, please, so that we can concentrate? Oh, don't worry, doctor, don't worry. And this goes the first ring. Yeah, turn the rice off. I'll be there in an hour and see Dr. Sosa, don't worry. And she keeps on calling. So I can't work anymore, but I'm willing to teach doctors and the patients. I don't charge a cent, and I'm very honored that you invited me. I want to share my knowledge, and of course, all the bibliography, the 3,500 documents I have. I want you to have them, and I've offered them. It's very sad. When I got sick, I used to have a conference like once every 2 weeks, and I did 2 or 3 conferences to people, but nobody cares. And it's very sad because, of course, I'm a physician, so I started doing medical conferences at the different universities, and it was very sad because every time we finished the conference, and Dr. Sosa, could you give us your cell phone number? And he's like, come on.
Have you not been listening?
My God. So I decided not to do it anymore because it's like a joke. And then I had once a guy coming up, oh, hold on, Dr. Sosa, listen. Yeah, we'll go to the store. Yeah, we'll buy a cell phone for each one of the kids. Yeah, and your mom too. Yeah, to that witch. Yeah, we'll buy her a cell phone too. That's the world.
Dr. Carlos, if there's anything we can do, I understand now that we can't actually send you any money, but if we have any products on our website that you would like, just let me know.
No, thanks. Well, you're doing a good job. You're doing a fantastic job with the Faraday cage because they work. I'm a witness. I was able to recover, and I am more or less doing well. Now, be aware that there are more things that need to be studied. At this point in time, I have a system that works very well in that the balance, the rate of oxidation and reduction, which has me right here talking to you, because had this happened a few years ago, I wouldn't have managed to tolerate the computer for more than 10 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you so much it's just been an absolute honor.
No, Glenn, my honor. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm open, and please include my email. You have it. Make it public. I want to help all the doctors. I've been open to do this ever since I got sick. I made it public that I wanted to dedicate my whole life, which now I'm free to do it. Lynn, thank you very much. A big hug to you. Okay,
thank you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bless you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.